Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Michael Tumlin. I'm a graphic designer, videographer, photographer, and podcaster, and host of Creatively Brief, the podcast, and this YouTube channel. Welcome back to another video. So today I want to walk you guys through how I create my own personal design work. So we're going to use sort of an example image, an example design, and I'm going to kind of walk you through the different steps and process that I go through whenever I'm working on designs like this one to create the final product. So we'll start by going ahead and jumping into Adobe Illustrator. I've got that open right here, and what I'm going to do is create new, and a lot of times I like to roll with about 500 by 500 pixels so that I have enough room to make a lot of artboards in the overall pasteboard. We'll just call this MTD Design Tutorial, if I can type it right. And I leave it in RGB because my designs live primarily on the internet. So once we press create there, we're going to go ahead and jump into the document. I always like to hit Control or Command R to pull up my rulers. I don't really use them that often, but I do enjoy having them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with sort of the brush. So you can see in the design that we're working on, you can tell that it's sort of got these like dots that are kind of being scattered around. And the way that I achieve that, the way I make that is I actually create a custom Illustrator brush. And so what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in and kind of get real close into the artboard here. I'm going to click on this icon to pull up, click and hold to pull up the ellipse tool, or press L on the keyboard to pull that up. And I'm going to hold Alt and Shift while I click and drag out. Alt is going to make it basically draw this shape from the center point of where you clicked, and Shift is going to keep it perfectly circular. So I'm going to do that so we get roughly around, actually right there is 1 pixel by 1 pixel. I'm going to let go of that. You'll notice that this looks filled in past the actual circle. It's because right now we have the stroke on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually, before I clear this out and put no stroke on, I'm actually going to flip them so that my fill color is this black, and then I'm going to make this white right here, this is the stroke. I'm going to go ahead and click this icon, which puts it to none. So there's no stroke on this anymore. So you'll see this circle, and you can see right here I'm at 6,372% zoom. So if I zoom back out and we look at this for what it is, it's really just this tiny dot. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select this, make sure it's selected. You want to click up here, which is where you can find your brushes. And I'm going to press this button right here, which makes a new brush. When this comes up, you're going to have a couple different options. To do what we're trying to do, remember, I was talking about how it's sort of like it's scattered and it's got these different like sizes and shapes and scattered around in different proportions, different spaces. So what you want to do is you want to pick Scatter Brush because that's what we're going to be creating, and press OK. Once you do that, you can name this something if you want. I don't normally, but we'll just call it MTD Tutorial again. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the size, spacing, and scatter all to random. So if you click this right here, you can see it drops down to random. And when I do that, you'll see that over here on the right-hand side of this dialog box, it's opening up these percentages. So you can adjust these now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the size up to 500. Spacing we'll do 500 for that as well. And then scatter, I'm going to leave alone for now, and we'll kind of preview this before we adjust anything on that. So I'm going to press OK. And you'll see that right here, now you have this icon, this brush that you have that you can apply. So we're going to go ahead and take this, and I'm just going to delete it. And if you take this line tool, you can then apply this brush to it, and you can see how it kind of affects it. So we'll use this line tool for right now, just while we kind of fine-tune the brush before we dig into actually making the design itself. So you can play with the different effects and kind of see what happens. So as you increase the spacing, it kind of gets bigger, and as you decrease, it turns more into a solid line. So we'll try making this like 1200. It's all right, but I think maybe a little lower. I think 1100 is a little nicer. You can play with the scatter, which as you see, that starts to kind of push it up. If you go the other direction, it'll push it back down the other way. I think I'll actually just leave this at 0 because I don't, well, no, let's bump it up to 150. 350. 350. We'll just actually go ahead and do 500. See, we learn as we go. A lot of this is honestly just trial and error, and you kind of play with it, and that's why I said draw this line in, and then you can adjust it as you're going, because it'll kind of give you a better feel when you can actually see it being applied. You can get a better feel for like what it actually looks like and what you're trying to achieve. So we'll go with that. So if you're following along, the settings are 500, 1100, and another 500. And we'll just press OK. Here, when this comes up, you want to say apply to strokes. That'll just apply it to everything that's got that brush currently applied to it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this because that's not actually part of the design. And then we're going to pull up our ellipse tool again. If you see right here, it's kind of snapping to center. I'll go ahead and do that because I want it centered anyways. And we're going to do the same that we did before where we hold Alt and Shift at the same time and then draw from the center to make a circle that's drawing from the center point and also that is symmetrical and proportional. So we're going to let go of that. And with this selected, we're going to go up here to where we went to make the brush originally. And now we're going to go find that brush, which is right here, MTD Tutorial. And we're going to click on that. And you'll see that's now applied this to this stroke, this path, this shape that we've got. And you can play with the size and it'll kind of give you different effects and you can do some really funky things. So we're going to go ahead and leave that at 1 point for right now. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to hit copy it with Command C or Control C. And then I'm going to Command or Control F to paste it in front. It looks like there's one circle right here, but there's actually two. So you'll notice if I do this, you can see that there's that second circle right there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and make it pretty small. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to nudge the size down. I typically like to go with like 0.25 because you can see it's kind of taking on the shape and sort of the scatterbrush element that the big one is. Then what we're going to do is we're going to press W on the keyboard to pull up the blend tool, or you can find this icon right here. And I'm going to click anywhere on this circle. So I just clicked once and then I'm going to alt click on the circle in here. You'll notice that now the icon has kind of changed and there's that plus button. So now we're going to actually be creating a blend. So we're going to go ahead and click on that with alt held down. And then we're going to click where it says smooth color and change it to specified steps. On this, I think we'll start with 40. And we'll just see how that looks. It's kind of like the brush. A lot of times it's just trial and error. So a lot of times it helps to just kind of put this in and kind of see how it turns out. And then we can move forward from there. So we'll go ahead and press OK. And it might take a second. And now you'll see you've got this whole design that's got this scatter brush applied as if there's a whole bunch of circles there. It's really, really cool. I don't really love it. So I guess I must have accidentally adjusted the size of this stroke as well because it's the 0.25 for the weight of the stroke. So we're going to go ahead and nudge that up. I find that whenever you nudge it up, you get some cool contrast. So you can see how now it's kind of like fading in as you go. I always like that effect, like just in all of my designs. I think adding that gives a little bit more dimension and a little bit more, just depth to the design. I do think this is a little bit high, so we'll change it to like 0.6. We'll go off their main ones. That's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and save this. We're going to save this to desktop. We're going to go to MTD Design Tutorial. Hit save, press OK. That's done saving. We're going to go ahead and open Photoshop. So for those of you who don't know, if you're not familiar with my work, it's always sort of these geometric pattern designs or something just kind of exploring shapes. And my goal is to explore how far I can push shapes and just these really minimal geometric things to like kind of become something more than just like a circle. And so to do that, I put these designs over photography. So we started in Illustrator, but now we're going to move into Photoshop. So now we've got the base vector design and we're going to put it over top of an image. So now that we're in Photoshop, unlike Illustrator, Illustrator is a vector format, and so when I made it 500 pixels by 500 pixels, I could theoretically scale this to as big as I'd like because this is based on like math equations, if that makes sense. I don't know all the technicalities, but it's based on math equations instead of being a raster image where you have like pixels that are making it up. So you'll notice like when I zoom all the way in, like on this circle, it's not getting grainy, fuzzy, blurry, any of that. Photoshop does not work that way though. So when you get to Photoshop, you want to set it up in the size that you want it to be. So a lot of times I'll make my designs 2000 by 2000 and I always set the resolution to 300 so that if I go to print them, they're high quality enough for print. So I'll change this again to MTD Tutorial. I'll leave the color at RGB just like we did in Illustrator and I'm going to press create. So now that we're in here, I'm going to do the same thing I did when we opened Illustrator. I'm going to hit Control or Command R to pull up my rulers, and then Control or Command 0 to fit this to our screen. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new File Explorer window, and I'm going to go find where we saved the Illustrator file. And I'm going to click and drag this in here just to place in. So I just drug the Illustrator file that I was working in and embedded it exactly like that. Like I said before, it's not vector, so you can notice that sort of pixelation on it, which is why you want to make it that high quality resolution before we start. And so then I'm going to take this, and I already found an image for this one that I feel like works pretty good. So we're going to take this and drag this in as well. And I'll scale it up. I'm holding Alt right now and then dragging from the side just to make sure that it's scaling from the center point. And then we're going to slide this up. Let's see. Maybe like right there. That's a nice, pretty even centered point for this. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to actually drag in a ruler, and you see how that snaps right there? That's it snapping to the center point of the document. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that right there. And I want to take this image, and you'll notice that this is actually not centered right now. I'm just going to nudge it over until it is centered. That's a little bit nicer. You'll notice I had enough on the edges that it doesn't cut it off. And then we're going to take this. I'm just going to, what I did there is I double-clicked on this layer. So if you double-click, it'll pull up layer styles. And I'm just going to do a color overlay, and we're going to pick white for right now, just so that we can see it a little bit better on this background and get it centered up where we want it to be. So I'm going to take this, and since we have this guide and we know that that was placed in the center, we pretty much just have to slide up until we get it to the edge of the building. I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to press Enter on my keyboard just to place that, and then I'll hit Control or Command 0 to zoom back out. So you'll notice that this is too big right now. So what I'm going to do is with this layer selected, I'm just going to Control or Command T to pull up the transform again, and then hold Alt while I shrink it down a little bit until I like it. And again, you'll notice that it's scaling from the center, so it makes it a little bit easier instead of having to scale and then move it. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and I'm actually going to turn this layer off. And then, so what I want to do is I want to kind of cut this out, right? So I don't want the building to be, I don't want this to be in front of the building. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out by essentially masking out that part of this design. So I'm just going to click the eyeball right here and turn that off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press P on the keyboard to pull up my pen tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then we're just going to take right here, and we're going to very quickly mask this out. Being that it's an architectural photograph, it's a lot easier to cut out because it's pretty straight and sharp lines. So we'll go do that. And then I'm just going to connect this back, and I'm going to press up here on selection to turn that into a selection. When you do that, you'll notice the marching ants come up, and so you can see that you're selected. And then with this selected, we're just going to hold Alt on the keyboard and then press this mask button down here under the Layers tab. When you do that, you'll notice it cuts it out. So now we have this roughly masked out. I want there to be more of the design and less of the building, so I'm going to take this and slide down, maybe to there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this, and if you see this little link right here, if you click that and unlink it, whenever you adjust the size of this now, it's going to keep the mask. So it's not going to adjust the size of the mask, which means when you scale up, you still have that mask and you can adjust as you need. This is something I didn't actually know until relatively recently, and it's very helpful on a lot of my designs whenever I finish it and then look back and want to like adjust the sizing. So we'll go ahead and press OK on that. And then last thing I'm going to do here is just select the color. So we made it white, and I honestly don't mind the white because this is kind of got that white hue and it's white on blue, but I think there was something a little bit more exciting that we could do. So I'm going to, with the color picker selected, just kind of click and drag over to find a color. And so this is basically like a live sample of the color that I'm on. So whenever you're looking at the color picker and it's kind of jumping around, that's what you're looking at, is whatever color you're on. And what I want to do is just find at least a hue, a rough idea of what it is that I'm looking for. I think maybe like here would be cool. And you notice it's kind of dark. So what we can do is actually just go into the saturation and brightness right here. And I think I'm going to nudge the saturation up once. I don't want to go too heavy on that. And then the brightness, if you start bumping that up, you'll see it kind of comes back out. And then whenever I get it that bright, I kind of don't like the saturation as high. I think more of a faded is kind of cool, especially with the material here. It looks like it'd be sort of like a faded concrete, not really faded, but I feel like it matches the aesthetic of the material in the building. So we'll do that, and I'm going to press OK. And that's honestly pretty much it. The last thing I would do, I'm press Command or Control S, and we're just going to save this onto my desktop right here. We're going to save it right there, save. I'll save it as a JPEG, Command-Shift-S or Control-Shift-S on a Windows just to pull up the save as, and then we're going to say JPEG, save it as that, and then click save. Leave it at maximum and hit OK, and you are good to go. So that's my workflow when I'm working on different designs. You know, obviously I had this one kind of already in mind when I went into it. A lot of times when I'm making new designs that I post on my personal design account, you know, I don't really know what I'm going to make yet. And so there's a lot more trial and error that goes into it. So if you're working on a design like this, you want to kind of pick up this style. Just know that this is a much more simplified version of how this all goes. So if it takes you more time to find design ideas and different things like that, like completely normal. I literally still do it, and I just posted over my 200th design. So it's just something that it takes time to be creative in general. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like on the video, and drop a comment down below letting me know what you want to see next. Also, make sure to get plugged in on our social media at Creatively Brief, and you can follow my personal design work at Michael Tumlin Designs. I'll be back next week with another video, but until then, have a great week, everyone. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.